Here's something that has always bothered me about real estate market stat updates. By the time you read them or watch them in a show like this, they're already old news. But with AI, it does not have to be that way. I'm Eddie Berenbaum. I've been in the thick of things in the Northern Virginia real estate market since 1998. And I grew one of the largest real estate brokerages, and sort of one of my passion projects with that company was running continuously updated market stats. And I can tell you, it took a lot of work and a lot of bandwidth, but with AI, things have totally changed. So I'm creating this show to share with you, people that care about real estate in the Northern Virginia market. Maybe you're looking to buy, sell, maybe you're an agent, doesn't matter. My goal is to download all the relevant stats with my own formula, right? My own special spices, and pick out a stat or two that you can use to go into the weekend armed with information, actionable information that can give you the upper hand in whatever negotiations you're going into. So each week, I'm going to be covering 5 areas in Northern Virginia, right? We're going to start with Arlington County and Alexandria City, and then we're going to go into Fairfax County, Loudoun County, and Prince William County. And we're going to do some cool dissecting of all these areas, and I'll offer some of that analysis in shorter videos that's going to be shown on my Instagram and my YouTube. But on this show, we're going to focus on 1 to 2 questions each week that we can let the stats answer to arm you into the weekend. And so this week's questions are: number 1, who has the advantage, buyers or sellers? Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? And number 2, if I see a property I like, how fast do I have to move? So let's start with the first question. Who has the advantage in the market? And to answer this question, we're going to start with 5 data points. The first 3 are pretty self-explanatory, and I'll give you a rundown of the latter 2. Right? Number 1, we're going to look at how many active homes are available. Number 2, we're going to look at what is the median asking price of the actively listed properties. And then number 3, we're going to look at what is the median sales price of the homes that have been sold in the last 90 days. The second 2 stats are, we're going to look at months inventory, right? That's number 4. And then number 5, we're going to look at what is the active to pending ratio. Definition of months inventory is you take the number of properties that are on the market, okay, the number of available properties, and you divide that by the number of properties that typically sell in a given month. And in our case, what we do is we take just the last 90 days, divide that by 3 to get that number, okay? Active to pending ratio is the number of actively available homes divided by the number of pending sales. The months inventory is much more scientifically used because it's a more certain number, right? We know definitely how many actively available homes there are, and we know how many on average have sold over the last 3 months. That is, definitive. However, the active to pending ratio, in my opinion, gives us better insight in terms of where the market is at this given moment. And that's because when a home goes under contract, so it goes into pending status, it typically takes 5 days to go to closing. So when you're looking at months inventory, you're kind of looking in the rearview mirror 30 to 45 days. Whereas if you look at the active to pending ratio, and you take into account the fact that some of those pending contracts could cancel, but you're getting a much clearer vision for where the market is right now. Okay, so let's look at the first set of data to answer this question. Okay, so this chart here is comparing our 5 areas, and when you look at actively available homes, the numbers largely are going to follow the population of each of these counties. Fairfax is by far the largest, followed by Loudoun and Prince William, with Arlington and then finally Alexandria being the smallest right there. So when you take a look at the median asking price of the available homes and the median sold price of the sold properties, you're going to get a lot better perspective in the following slides when I break this down between single families, townhomes, and condos. And you could argue the same thing with the next 2 categories, which is going to be the month's worth of inventory and the active to pending ratio. A couple things I definitely want to point out is you take a look at Loudoun County. It's got that 0.97, so under 1 month's worth of inventory, which is, it crazy favors the sellers in generally speaking, that's about as good as you can get. And then the active depending ratio, it's even lower. And so when you see an active depending ratio lower than the month's inventory, that means that the market tends to be heating up, all right, which is normal. The spring market tends to hit early, right here in Northern Virginia. It'll be interesting to see the stats next week after, the big snowstorm that we've had. So let's dive a little bit deeper, and I'm going to start with the condominiums because as crazy hot as these numbers show, the condominiums market is actually dragging them down, making them look slower than they actually are. And so when we put this up here and we take a look at the number of active homes, you can see again Fairfax has the most, not surprising right there. But let's take a look at the month's inventory. Condominiums in Prince William, 3.5 months worth of supply. You compare that to 1.26 in the overall market, and you can see that condominiums in Prince William are performing significantly worse. Interestingly enough, in Loudoun, we're only at 1.47 on the month's inventory. Fairfax 1.87. And then Arlington, Alexandria are both in the mid twos. So comparatively speaking, to the overall market, the condo market is the conditions are much more neutral. It used to be back in the day, people would say that a 6 months worth of inventory was a neutral market, but that number over time has kind of shifted to 3. So I would say by the book, it's still a seller's market when it comes to condominiums, but it's much more neutral. And if you use that 3, you could say that it's arguably a buyer's market in Prince William, at least for the 101 available condominiums that you have right there. In every instance, though, if you look, with the exception of Arlington, where the active depending ratio is slightly higher than the month's inventory, but in every other market, that active depending ratio is lower than the month's worth of inventory. So that means things are heating up even in the condo market. All right, I want to dive into the single family market next. And so what we're seeing here is the numbers are much more heavily weighted towards sellers in this market here. Leading the way again, you've got Loudoun County at the 0.91 months inventory with active depending ratio even lower at the 0.73. And then you get into the townhomes, which is a big affordability play. So over the last decade, we've seen really the highest demand in homes, entry level homes. So the townhomes are really attractive in there. And so you're seeing, look at Fairfax. Fairfax has 0.69 months worth of inventory on the townhomes, and that's even lower, 0.63 with the active depending ratio. And again, Arlington is kind of bucking the trend. Arlington is the one area where those active dependings are actually higher than at exactly 1 to 0.87. But this still points for the townhomes, just like single-family homes, to being squarely in the favor of sellers when it comes to negotiations. Okay, so let's dive into this second question, which is, if I fall in love with a home this weekend, how fast do I have to act? Do I have time to think about it? Can I call my relatives, or do I need to huddle with my agent right away and strategize on how we're going to not only submit, but win an offer? And so to answer this question, what we did is we took a look at all the pending sales in our 5 different areas, and we put those numbers in this first column. And then we analyzed, of those pendings, how many went under contract within a week, how many went under contract within 2 weeks, within a month, within 2 months. And what you can see is, in all instances, more than a third of the properties went under contract within that first week. And just about half went under contract within 2 weeks. So the answer is, if it is compelling right now, it's going to be selling, and you want to move fast. But I wanted to take the analysis of these numbers even further, because if you look back to our last question, what you saw was that condos, townhomes, and single families homes performed differently, and also we said that the market is heating up. So the next question I asked Claude, my analyst, was to take a look at just the last 14 days. So going back to January 14th, and I want to look in each area and understand of the homes that came on from January 14th moving forward, how many are under contract. And so in Alexandria, what you can see is 51.2% of every home listed, since January 14th is under contract. The interestingly enough, the single family homes are the smallest percentage, 40, and then the townhomes at 57.4%. Keep in mind, Alexandria is the smallest geographical area, so there's the most room for variability right there. So moving on to Arlington County, we can see that things are moving a little bit slower in Arlington County. Granted, there's more homes for sale. 42% of all properties listed since January 14th are currently under contract, with single families and condos right about that 40% range, and townhomes at 53%. Of course, there's not a whole lot of townhomes in Arlington County, so that's a bit of an outlier. Fairfax County, we've got 47.4% of all homes listed since January 14th are already under contract, right? You're seeing this story. They're moving really quick. You have to take into account that, not every agent, not every seller, lists their home at a really compelling, ready to move price. So when you come across something that makes sense, these numbers are telling you really need to act fast. But like so many other instances, the condos market is going under, homes in the condo market are going under contract a little bit slower than the single family homes and the townhomes. Loudoun County, 46.2% of all homes that went on the market January 14th or later are under contract, with single families moving the fastest, condos the slowest, townhomes in between. And finally, Prince William County, so we're at 43.5% under contract for properties that have listed since January 14th. So these numbers paint the overall picture, right? They give you the 30,000 foot view. The conditions strongly favor the sellers. If you fall in love with the property, you should act really, really fast, because if it's compelling, it's selling. But they don't tell you about your particular property. Every city, every neighborhood, every street, every house is unique. And that is where the power of a locally focused agent comes in. So what I do at Stone Pine Partners is I match buyers and sellers with the perfect agent for their local market. And I give you a guarantee. So if you don't like that agent, I'll replace them with another local expert, but that rarely ever happens. So if you're interested in learning more, just go to stonepine.partners, grab time on my calendar, we'll do a consultation, or just send me a text or an email, and I look forward to kicking this process off. If you're an agent and you want to create videos just like this, and you're like, I would love to know how to do that, head over to my website, Balanced Busy, right? I run a coaching service, training service that helps agents like yourselves grow their business in a way that prioritizes their personal life. That's a big passion project of mine. So you can check that out, and you have free access to all the stats and all the files. I'll show you exactly how I do this so you can duplicate the process yourself. Just go to balancedbusy.com. If you like the show, hit subscribe, right? And like it so that the algorithm knows that you like it, and that gives us favors. And I will see you back here next Thursday for more real estate stats. Thanks for tuning in.